Right. Hello, everyone. Debbie, thank you for that wonderful music. Welcome to today's webinar, What These Restaurant Owners Are Doing to Combat the Labor Shortage. I'm Ashley Koziak. I'm the Programs Director here at the James Beard Foundation, and I'm so happy to be welcoming you to the webinar this afternoon. So those of you who have joined us for webinars in the past, some of this is going to sound familiar. Since March of 2020, the James Beard Foundation has been hosting industry support webinars and virtual events just like this one to help businesses navigate the challenges of COVID-19, provide resources for the hospitality industry, and to stay better connected throughout these difficult times. So I'm going to first start with a few housekeeping items, and then I'm going to introduce our moderator and our panelists for today. So first off, as you saw when you joined, this webinar is being recorded. We'll post a link to the recording on openforgood.com after the program wraps. If you have any questions for the panelists, please write them in using the Q&A feature. We'll try to address a few questions as time allows. If you're having technical difficulties, just message us using the Q&A and we'll do what we can to troubleshoot. My colleague Debbie is here and is keeping an eye out and will be happy to assist. So next I'm going to introduce our moderator and the panelists for today. Today's moderator is Anne McBride, our new VP of Programs. Very excited to announce that for the James Beard Foundation. Anne is a native of Switzerland and holds a PhD in food studies from NYU and a bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Throughout her years working alongside JBF, she co-authored a white paper on American cuisine and served as chair of the Leadership Awards Committee, Subcommittee and Awards Committee. Anne is a member of the Harvard CIA Menus of Change, Scientific and Technical Advisory Council, and a past board member of the Association for the Study of Food and Society, New York Women's Culinary Alliance, and Culinary Trust. Our panelists today are Mo Carter of Sketch Chicago and MJB Restaurant Group in Chicago. In 2008, Mo opened the Mondrian West in Miami, and over the years has managed at Gigi, Landry's, The Purple Pig, and the Chicago Athletic Association. One of Chicago's most sought operation managers, she is recognized for her staff retention, hiring, and training processes, as well as dining room design and functionality. She is equally admired for her commitment to social and racial equity and wage parity in creating a fair and sustainable work environment. Originally from Atlanta, culinary director and partner Ron Su brings culinary chops from Michelin-starred Le Bernardin and Le Colonial from internationally acclaimed NYC restaurants. He has served as executive sous chef at Le Bernardin before taking an executive chef position at La Colonial, and then returning to Le Bernardin as creative director. Lazy Betty, Sue's first restaurant, opened February 2019 in Atlanta, Georgia. Ron and his business partners recently announced the summer of 2021 opening of Juniper Cafe, a modern Vietnamese cafe and bakery. We're also joined by Ji-Hae Kim. Ji-Hae is the chef and managing partner of Miss Kim, a Korean restaurant greatly influenced by Korean ancestors and Michigan farmers. Miss Kim is a part of the Zingerman's community of businesses in Ann Arbor, Michigan, famed as much for its fair values and innovative business practices as for its full-flavored artisanal food. And last but certainly not least, we're joined by Joshua Lewin. With Katrina Jazeri, Joshua Lewin owns and operates Juliet and Company, a fiercely independent collection of a couple of small restaurants plus more. Lewin is a cook, entrepreneur, and storyteller who mixes technique and mediums into a unique and immersive experience, whether at the table, on the page, or beyond. A chef by trade, Lewin is focused on transferring knowledge and skills and empowering a team to take action to do more with less for collective benefit. I will let Mo, Ron, Ji-Hae, and Joshua introduce themselves more fully as the conversation unfolds. But right now, I'm going to hand it over to Anne McBride to help guide us through this discussion.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Welcome, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. And pleasure is a weird word, perhaps, as we discuss something really complicated this afternoon. So the framing of this panel is on what are restaurant owners doing to combat labor shortage, but we're going to talk a lot about wage, because is this a labor crisis or is this a wage crisis? So my first question, which will be a great opportunity for all of you to tell more to our audience about your business models, is what is the compensation model that you use or that you have used at your restaurants? And Mo, let's start with you.
Hi, everyone. This is a great conversation and I'm excited to be a part of it. Currently, what I'm doing at Sketch is all employees, we start with minimum wage in Illinois. So right now in the city of Chicago, minimum wage is $15. So I am starting my staff with that. I feel that across the board, minimum wage was something that was important to restaurant staff, front of house, back of house, that we all kind of start on the same level. With that compensation, I also offer career training, easy mobility, getting into learning more about management. So we're one house, is how I operate Sketch.
Great. Josh, what about you?
So we're a 5-year-old company now, recently, I guess, and we opened our business with full minimum wage for all staff. So that includes service staff, and that was our beginning. We actually achieved the $15 minimum wage in 2018 for the company. I'm sorry, the end of 2018. So throughout 2019, and we had plans for a transparent step-up wage structure to begin in 2020. 2020 had other plans for us, so instead we froze wages, but we're moving back to that now. So we start with a full minimum wage that includes service staff, which is obviously a big question about tipping. We are full service restaurants, but we're above minimum wage. So, we're trying to track with a living wage, and that applies to all support staff as well, or traditional roles that would be paid minimum wage and no more, or wouldn't have access to a raise structure throughout their career with us. So long story short, we start with what we consider a living wage, and we're looking to raise that as the company grows, and then we introduce career pathways. So not the only career in our restaurants is not for the chef or for the manager, but anybody who works for years in their role should be developing career skills and career impact to that organization. So in one example, we have dishwashing staff and sometimes food running staff, which we call a back service position, and roles that are traditionally non-English speakers or non-primary English speakers in our geographic area, and introduce training and pathways and scaffolding to create careers without changing anything else about that individual's circumstance. So it starts with living wages, and then it becomes career opportunity. But we try to redefine what opportunity and career means, and that it's not just a promotion into directly managing others, but it's actually about developing an ability to impact a business and themselves. That's the short story.
Great. Shea, what about you?
Miss Kim is in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where the minimum wage is $9 and change and not 15. We are a 4.5-year-old restaurant, and we opened as one fair wage restaurant, so that with just like Mo and Josh, front of the house and the back of the house have the same starting wage, same level. I think it ranges right now, hourly base wage of anywhere between $12 to $15 an hour. And we are a tip share restaurant. Michigan allows, as long as there's no tip credit, it allows sharing of the tips between front of the house and the back of the house. So we share tips across all departments for hourly staff only. And that allows them to make way above living wage for our county. We also offer full benefits, paid time off. We have open structure for how to get more skill set that's tied to wages. So a staff can look at that chart and see where they are and what they have to do to get promotion or wage increase, and it's not just tied to managing people, because some people are great cooks but they're not great managers, and that nor is it what they want to do. And then we offer full benefits with it.
Great. Ron?
Hi, thank you for having us, for having me as well. I feel very honored to be part of this panel. But yeah, so I run Lazy Betty. We've been open for almost 3 years now. We pay everyone a fair minimum wage in Georgia, which is, I believe, $7.25 or $7.50 an hour. And we did not start off with that when we first opened. And after the pandemic hit, we kind of pivoted to giving everyone a minimum wage, mainly obviously the front of the house. But something that we have been doing since we first opened was implement a service charge. Basically, we take 20% off the top and then reallocate that through basically a tip pool. We call it a service pool, since we're not technically it's not a tip. And then we split that amongst the front and the back of the house for non-salaried employees. And that's really great, because it just helps us basically manage, not manage, but also provide our staff incentives. Because the way we do it is we basically kind of, how can I say it? We categorize the sales to specific parts of our restaurant, such as like beverage sales, food menu sales, supplements and stuff like that. And it kind of, for like alcohol, our front of the house gets, I believe they get 90% of that particular sale from the 20% that we allocate. And that's really helped our business. And it's really essentially, when you boil it down, it's almost like a profit sharing, right? Because everything that we sell, they get 20% off of. And that's helped us tremendously. And it is not the norm in Georgia now that the pandemic has hit. There's a lot more restaurants that are doing it, but it is something that has helped us with staff retention and making sure that all our staff can make good money even when we are slow.
And so that's often the fact that when you do things like tip sharing and when there's a service charge, it sort of even things out between Monday through Saturday, between winter, summer, all those kind of things. But there's still such a friction, right, around that. So, and you've done it before the pandemic, you're doing it more now. A lot of people tried. The pandemic has helped some people implement these kind of service charges. But have you ever had pushback? Is this something that you've had to just, pardon my French, but suck it up and push through at some moments? Did you ever think of going back on that? Because that is something so many people have tried and reversed, right? So what's the miracle there?
Well, for me, it was because we're in a market that we were maybe only 1 or 2 restaurants in Atlanta that did a mandatory service charge before the pandemic. The biggest pushback wasn't about the amount of money. It was just people being unaware, whether it was on the restaurant side or customer side. So it was just a lot of communication that we had to really lean on in order to make people less apprehensive to it. So that was it. We also gave a lot of material out to our staff, like, oh, if we do X amount of business, right, and this amount of sales, and you work X amount of hours every week, this is how much you would be bringing home. So it was just about communication and education, really, on both sides of the restaurant industry, customer and the restaurant itself, the business side. But after everyone got used to it, after our customers and guests got used to it, they love it. Customers like it because they don't have to worry about how much to tip. And staff likes it because they can, now that we've been open for almost 3 years, there's a good pulse on how much business we'll do. And it allows them to basically budget better, right? Like they can manage their life better and they know how much to expect to make from our business.
And you answered Kim's question in the chat, who was asking if it's a service charge added to the customer's ticket. So yes, if there's no tip, it means that the charge is added to their ticket. From your answer, I gather.
That's correct. Yeah. So basically, the way we do it at Lazy Betty is before we roll out or establish a price, we figure out what we need to do like what the restaurant needs to do in order to survive. And then we just add another 20% on the price, on the menu price. And so that's kind of how we do it. Where other restaurants, they'll just add like at the bottom, a flat line of whatever percent, 18, 15, 20% to the end of the bill, where ours is already all inclusive into the bill. But something that we also do is we allow for additional gratuity by our guests. So I'll be honest, I think right now we're probably, if you include the service charge and the optional gratuity, I would say that our customers are leaving about 25 to 30% total after the cost of their F&B, the food and beverage. So it really helps. And right now that the market is very sensitive to the livelihood of restaurants, and they know how precarious the financial situation is of staff, they're being very generous and very sensitive to that fact. And people like it. They like knowing that the staff is being taken care of.
Yeah. Gia, I want to ask you that same question in terms of, did you ever have any pushback from your front of the house staff with your model?
With the front of the house staff, no. I thought about not doing it for the first 2 years every day because it was very tough. Where we were, and even now, one of the very few that does not take tip credit in our area, including Detroit area. We started out as actually no tip restaurant on top of one fair wage restaurant. And we got a lot of pushback from the customers who are accustomed to leaving tips, and they wanted to leave some sign of gratitude, like true gratuity. So then we opened the tip line, and that increased the staff's pay significantly. And one of the reasons why we didn't have pushback from the front of the house is, one, that we started with this, so it wasn't a change for them. And two, when we started out as one fair wage, we didn't really have a lot of experienced servers applying. So we hired people with barista experience or some other customer service experience, and we trained them up. That has been also had an added benefit of having more diverse staff racially, because Ann Arbor, Michigan, if you have sort of like mid-level or fine dining experience in Ann Arbor housing market is so that it's a majority white servers if you were to get experienced servers. So by opening the door more wide open, it got us people who are already bought in from the beginning because they knew what they were getting into. It was not a change in their livelihood, and staff were more open to changes in a way, which helped us in the end when we had to pivot a bunch of times with the pandemic as well.
Speaking of training, Josh and Mo, I'm wondering if you can talk more specifically about the training programs that you have in place, and how do you position that as a perk? Do you position that as a just part of the business and something that everyone should expect no matter where they go? Can you tell us a little bit more? Mo, let's start with you.
My training, well, for me being a Black female in this business, everything starts right with that. And wanting to share my experiences in hospitality with everyone. My training is specific to people of color. So my idea is not to just bring you more into the industry, but to bring you more into management, and which led me to ownership. Starting as a server and then building my way over many decades, I ended up with the experience to be a director of operations. And then the next stop from there is having your own place. I want to see more people of color do that. It's not enough to get in the business and then end up in the kitchen, which is really where we're mostly directed. But there's such an experience in being in the front of house. So my training is eliminating back of house and front of house. When you work for me, you learn to cook. I don't care if you're a server, a bartender, whomever. If I need a sauce that needs to be made, you know how to make it. Everyone in this house knows how to make it. If there is a customer, a guest comes in and they need to pay and be given their check, I don't care if you are sauteing Brussels sprouts, you can stop doing it and you know how to cash out a guest. We're all just one big unit. So I think that training allows people to say, I'm not being holed into one group. I'm not in this category. Yes, I can cook, but then I can also maybe do the front of house, get that experience and move on to something different in my next job. It's about what you do next. So my training is specific to people of color, gaining different experiences, and then taking that on to the next step.
Josh, what about you?
I'd love that from Mo, where everybody can do everything from day one. We have a spirit of some of that, but we start with a specific job first. So we may hire a host, we may hire a cook, and we'll put them through a 6-week or so training program, a little different depending on the job, where they're really comfortable and confident to manage themselves in that area, with a lot of empowered decision making and a lot of service training for thinking through the choices that are made in hospitality. So you have a first-time line cook who understands the thought process of how their work impacts everybody else on the team. But then we get into 3 to 5 months on the team, and everybody now has the goal. It's the manager's job to make sure that anybody who's been with us for that long can do every role in the department where they work. So now a dishwasher can do all the prep cooking and can cook all the line stations, and that's everybody's kind of basic training. That's what's expected. They start to become paid more at that time, and they can develop a career from just that alone. So somebody who's at that level of performance, they start to go on it's 3 reviews in their first year, but then they go on a yearly review program. They get earnings adjustments every year based on performance. Their review is never a performance review, it's a career training path. So if we need to do performance check-ins or coaching or mentoring, that all happens separately. So everybody shows up to those reviews and they're ready for the next step. But some people don't want to go further. So we have people that might be most comfortable in the kitchen. Maybe they have some anxiety or pensiveness about stepping into the front of house and vice versa. And we honor all of that at that point, but they're really contributing a lot. Or they branch off into the next step, which sounds a little bit like what Mo was describing, where now the goal is that everybody could do anything for each other. And from there, they can move into management. And all of that's very transparent. So we issue them like videos and discussions and coaching on day one about this is what it's going to look like. But of course, most of that goes over their head. So that's why we do the 3 check-ins in the first year. So we get in there at about 2 months in, we get in there at 6 months, and we get in there at 1 year. And at 1 year, we're writing a vision with the MGA, the Zingerman's community, and we are developing a career. But for each one of them, that career is going to look substantially different. But for every single one of them, it includes real income adjustments, real goal setting, and their voice and what that training is going to look like next.
I love this phrasing of not a performance review, which kind of looks at the past of what you've done anyway, right? Versus focusing on the future and what you're going to do. And it's always interesting to hear things like that. And why is it not what every industry and every business is doing? Because it's such a great mental tool for your employees, for yourself, etc. Robert is asking, and that was going to be my next question to you. So that's actually perfect. Mo, you made me think of that while talking. What is your sense of the employee retention that you have as a result of these models? Go ahead, whoever wants.
I'm very lucky in employee retention. I say that I've been blessed to have staff that sticks around, stays around. They know what they were walking into with me, knowing a lot of people in the Chicago area who do this for a living. And unfortunately, the last year and a half put many people in a position to want to try something different, do something different. So employee retention has been great. I'm just lucky. I have people who stay with me for years, who climb, who move on to something different, who it works because they have that freedom of knowledge. And I think that's what's most important with staff.
Ron, what about you?
Our employee retention has been very good. I think our staff not only enjoys making better money and knowing that it's consistent, but I think when you create a service charge or a tip pool system, and everyone is within that pool, I think it creates better team chemistry. I like what Mo's been harping on, and not a front of the house or back of the house, and just creating one house. And I think if you can create that culture, and everyone's kind of pulling in the same direction, that in itself will eliminate a lot of your turnover. And so for us, it's been really good at Lazy Betty. We're really good on staffing right now. We haven't really been too spread thin in terms of hiring. Like, I feel like restaurants are always like, oh, we need more people, but there's always that like breaking point. Okay, you want more people? Do you really need it? right? And Lazy Betty has never been at a point where we're like, oh man, we need somebody. And it's been great. And, you know, when people, when we're going through the training or interviewing process, they love it because they understand that, like, you know, like at my restaurant, a lot of our cooks will serve people. They act as food runners or back waiters, kind of support. They're not taking orders or explaining wines and stuff like that, but they do know food. And it also shows them that side of the business and creates a little empathy between the front and the back of the house. And then the front of the house is great. They love it too, because they get to interact with a lot of the back of the house, right? When they're running, or if it's a four top, you know, you have a cook and a server dropping food. It just creates more harmony and more, you know, you got each other's back, and the culture it really helps. They help each other, right? People are less willing to call out, you know, if they know that they're vested with their counterparts and stuff like that. So overall, I think it's very helpful. And, you know, something you mentioned earlier with our model, because we're pooling, it doesn't put a higher premium on the weekend nights, like Friday, Saturday nights. So there's less fighting about why is this person getting that shift and all that. So it eliminates a bunch of headaches that a normal tip model restaurant would have.
If I could jump in.
Please.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on what Mo and Ron said as well. Having the more equitable wage model allowed us to cross-train more easily between departments. And when something big like the pandemic hits, we were able to move a lot of our front of the house staff who are willing to train in the back to be line cooks. So we trained them up. And throughout the pandemic, we didn't really have to look for anybody until like very, very recently. Our retention has been really good. I have staff who's been here since we opened, and I think what's challenging for us right now is that I rarely lose our staff to another restaurant or food business, but I do lose them to a different career. Yeah, because I think the pandemic kind of highlighted a lot of things that are not really working for restaurant industry. And people are in the mood for maybe trying a different career. So that has been challenging.
You mean some warehouses may have opened in your area and gotten staff from you? Because I've heard that story a lot.
I think yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Jihei. I hate jumping in. I hate Zoom. So very, very briefly, we don't have any trouble hiring, and we have very strong retention. So I don't say that to sound like, oh, yay, us, but I know there may be people on the call that are evaluating these type of procedures with staff and policies and pay. The big thing is budgeting for a P&L, but you know, I used to be a chef, but now I'm a business owner, and that's just my job now. So we have to do that work. We do that work quarterly, period based. We do it with our team. They understand the costs involved. They understand the cost of the resources that are themselves, and they help us steward that. We're very open about that. We have staff who have been with us for 5 years. We're a 5-year-old company. Those staff now work with us on those things at the, oh God, corporate level. And we're not having any trouble hiring through the pandemic. We do work with a lot of first-time restaurant workers, and that's challenging for a week or two, but you know, it's just technical at that point. So we're not afraid of that, and we have to do the work for the training to make that work. And we lose people, like Jihei said, to other careers, and we're happy when it happens because it's a good thing for them. And we send them off into those careers with a lot of hard and soft skills about advocating for themselves and understanding the workplace and stewarding supportive workplaces themselves. Oh, sorry, I said I was going to be brief, but restaurants are such an important cross section for the culture, American culture. And you know, things are learned here. We work with a lot of people in their first jobs, and they learn respect or not respect. They learn whether harassment will be tolerated or not. They learn what it feels like to speak up or not speak up. And we send them off into their careers with those lessons, lessons that weren't taught to me in my 22 years of restaurants before I had my own restaurants. And this is really what it's all about. So when we lose them to other careers, it's sad, but it's also really fulfilling when that's the only reason it ever happens. And everybody else, you know, stays here learning and earning and helping us do what's very important to us. And it's a privilege to be able to do it, but we're not having any hiring trouble through the pandemic. And our retention is very, very high. And I hope people listening will consider digging into doing some of this themselves for their communities and their businesses.
Can I chime in one more time too?
Please.
About training? It's a very good question posed by Robert. But one thing too that I would like, for people that that operate with a tip credit is that, at least in the state of Georgia, if you don't claim a tip credit, you are allowed as an employer to divvy up job duties as you see fit. Whereas if you claim the tip credit, at least in the state of Georgia, if you're in the front of the house, I believe it's 80% of your hours worked have to be customer facing, which really limits you in terms of an operator, right? But if you don't claim the tip credit, you have a lot of flexibility on where you want to train and hire people. Like one thing that I always find amusing in restaurants is the juicing of citrus. It's usually done by the bartender, which is the front of the house, but the back of the house always piggybacks on it. And then, we get a little tug of war all the time. Why do I have to do this for the back of the house or blah, blah, blah. But with, if you eliminate all that and it's one house like Mo's been preaching and you do a service pool, you don't have any of those fights, right? And if you're a good operator, it gives you more flexibility to operate, which in theory should help you be more efficient as a business. So not only can it give you more efficiency, it also creates a team atmosphere as well. And it creates empathy, which I think is very important. If you have people cross-training from the front or the back and, people understand what's hard and, why you do what you do, and they're not so blind to it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
And understanding the legalities behind everything is obviously really key. And JBF has a bunch of resources. Actually, I'm wondering if that's something we can drop in the chat, and if there's anything even on the website or something like that, some links for how to talk to your representatives, your restaurant associations, people who might know, because there's still so many questions and around what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. So Josh answered that on the Q&A, but if you can all in a couple of seconds answer what's the size of your staff and the number of seats that you have, so that we have that on the record.
I run a few concepts in Chicago. So between my 3 concepts, I have 25 staff members. And my sit down concept is 70 seats, 60 sit down and 10 at a cold counter for service.
Josh, you answered, but if you don't mind, just.
Yeah, of course. So we have 2 restaurants, one with 30 seats, one with 55, plus a 9-seat bar. We're opening a 3rd restaurant later this year, which will have 75 seats, including the bar. The staff of the smaller restaurant fluctuates between 12 and 18 people, and more like 25 people in our larger restaurant.
Okay, Gia, what about you?
Our staff size is about 20 to 25 staff, and we seat 75 people with the bar and counter seats included. Outdoor seats add another 20 on top.
Great. And Ron?
So right now we operate one restaurant, Lazy Betty, which is around 62 to 64 seats, depending on the table layout. And we have a staff of about 30 to 35. But a lot of those staff members are not full-time. We have the luxury to not have all our staff work full-time. And we ask them that, like, do you want full-time, part-time? So even though it seems like our staff is large, they're not a lot of them. I would say only probably around 18 to 22 are actually working 40 plus hours a week, maybe about half of that. So, and then the Juniper Cafe, which will, knock on wood, hopefully open by the end of summer, which I don't think the city of Atlanta cares about my goals, but anyways, that is going to be a much larger restaurant, probably around 120 seats. And we think we'll probably all in, we'll have around 45 staff for that restaurant. And we plan on operating with a service charge as well, right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And so tying some of the things we were just talking about, and then a follow-up question from Belkis on, so are people leaving the industry from the staff that you have because they don't see it as a career, they want another career, or is it because however good the restaurant industry is, it still doesn't necessarily always have the same benefit packages that a corporate job may have? What do you see, and how are you or would you like to rectify that if that's the case?
I can answer that. Ms. Kim is part of Zingerman's community of businesses. We've always offered, maybe not always, but like for like 2 decades, maybe, offered full benefit packages, medical, dental, vision, full 401k, paid time off, massage credit. I like to throw that in there. There's a lot there, along with a lot of training available. But I still lose staff to other industries. I think part of the reason may be that we are in a college town, so we just end up getting a lot of students already on a different career path. So that may be one. Mm-hmm. Another is that no matter what I do in my little business, if the industry-wide does not change, like they don't see a career outside of the organization they're in currently, and they want to do something else. And the pandemic kind of highlighted, like our guests have been really amazing and generous and patient through the pandemic. But a lot of our staff heard so many horror stories from other restaurants with the mask mandate and all of this stuff. They saw how fragile the restaurant industry can be when something big hits. And it just kind of turned a lot of them off in considering hospitality as a career.
That's a really important point. The fact that this cannot, for it to work, it cannot just be at the individual level, right? Or yeah, people will stay with you for however many years, but they may not want to be, or you may not want for people to stay 20 years in their job. And so
if they don't, if they want, that would be great. But I will always want people to go and do better things, and some things I cannot provide as a 75-seat restaurant in the middle of Michigan.
I think it's important that compensation, pay is first and foremost in this conversation when it comes to restaurants. Typical restaurant careers, there's a certain number of people that will develop beyond the basics of a living wage if they even ever reach that point. So we do offer medical, dental, vision. It's half paid by the staff member. For full-time staff, we're very flexible about what full-time means. Anybody that wants to be able to have half their benefits paid, we pay them. We're only 5 years old. We'd like to be able to pay full benefits someday. We have long-term vision plans that include, not vision, vision for the company plans that include that being possible. But if you're not making enough money to live on, then you can't pay for health insurance. So we are massage credits, which we also do, Jihei. But they're not, if you have to pay something or if you have to take time off of work to take advantage of it. So it's really the ability to develop basic finance really comes first. So when the question is framed as, well, there's no benefits package in restaurants, therefore people are leaving, I think it's actually more holistic of an answer than that. Even if there were benefits packages, if you have 3/4 of your staff that doesn't know if they'll make a living wage that week, maybe it's only half of them that don't make a living wage, but then there's 1/4 of them that maybe do, maybe don't sometimes. And you have all this uncertainty about basic necessities and all the stress that goes with that. You're not going to take time off to care for your mental health. You're not going to take the meditation class. You're not going to get the massage, which has all of this like residual benefit to you as an individual, but it's not worth anything if you have that basic stress of finance. And when we start to deal with the demographics of restaurants and racial and gender issues and immigration issues, yes, the benefits would be great, but there's a very basic industry-wide step that we have employ all of these people, and if all of these people could reach basic financial health based on their full-time plus work, then we can start to have that conversation. But you may go work for a startup tomorrow where you're paid $130,000 a year, but you don't have a benefits package because they're in their 3-year ramp up to, whatever. So I think that there's just two parts of the question. And it's really important to realize that so many people work in restaurants who do not have their basic financial needs met. It doesn't sound like anybody operating the restaurants on this call is in that position, but there's so many people who are. So culturally, this needs to change first, and this is why people are leaving restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, what Josh is saying on, and also what Jihei mentioned as far as benefit packages, I'm a small company, small group, we all are. And so providing benefits is difficult financially. Also, as a server, going through this business, I always kept my own insurance, which allowed me to do that was the income I made. I have been, again, graciously blessed to have made quite a living in this business, which I want to share with other people. But because of that, I was able to buy my own benefits, take care of myself. Again, you lose a job, you lose those benefits. How do you keep that going no matter where you go? It's to take care of self. In order to do that, though, I have to provide you with an income. I have to provide you with money so that you can pay for insurance, so that you can take care of yourself. That is my goal. As far as like extra side things, mental health is so urgent in this business. We don't focus on it. We continue to get up because our bodies will get up. We work 18-hour days and we push and we talk to 400 people a day, and we don't take time to relax, to self-care. So for me, it's group yoga, mandatory company yoga. You got to go. I don't want to hear about it. We're going to yoga. We're going to work as a team, and we're going to relax as a team on one day. Just one day a month is all I'm asking. I think doing these little things as a group brings the team closer together. It also goes back to retention. When you are tight, you're less likely to leave a friend. So it trickles down in the little things that we do. Again, Josh is absolutely right. It starts with the pay. I have to give you a reason to come in and work these 18-hour shifts. And that is about what I'm paying you. So it is my goal to keep a smaller staff, to keep a tighter staff, and doing that through the little things. Little things are always first.
And there's such a fine line. It's a very positive framing because the restaurant as family, it's been abused, right, for a long time because you don't want to let your friends down, the rest of your team down, you'll work injured, sick, etc. Right? So it sounds like you're putting a more positive twist on what it means to be a team and a family. And it doesn't mean that you should not take care of yourself because someone else might need to be working harder that day.
No, please take the day off. I'll wait tables. Please take some time. Happy staff equals happy guests. It takes care of itself.
Well, and hopefully happy owners too, which is important in this context, to not forget yourselves, right? Ron, is there anything you want to add on this benefits discussion?
Yeah, so, I think what's important as people, the owners or the main operators is to, when you're figuring out your pro forma budget, you need to allocate, because a lot of restaurants don't do that. And I think if you do that as an operator, if you're willing to just make less money as an owner and make sure you take care of your staff, it's going to come back in the long run. Less turnover, healthier staff, better performance. But what I have found in the Lazy Betty is my first friend. We offered health insurance from the very beginning. And when I would go talk to my 21-year-old cook,
you're freezing a little bit.
It was such a foreign idea to them. Like they just got, I don't know what to do about my internet. Am I still freezing? Or
it goes very slow and then very fast to catch up on what you said. Maybe turn off your camera for a second until it catches up.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Let me see. Okay, so what I have found, hopefully this is better, is that one of the biggest hurdles we've had is, not only being able to allocate money in your budget to offer the health insurance, is to also educate your staff, especially the younger ones that are just starting off in the industry, or the ones that, aren't as familiar with health insurance policies and stuff like that. You really got to educate them, and you got to implore them. And this is one big mantra we harp on at Lazy Betty, is you got to take care of yourself outside of work in order to take care of yourself inside of work, whether that's mental health. We have a obviously substance abuse is a big problem in the restaurant industry, and we have a lot of industry vets that actively coach up our younger guys to make sure they're taking care of themselves. Go out and have fun, but don't do it too often, and don't let habit become lifestyle. Right. And also, but making sure that they understand if you take care of yourselves and budget for health insurance and take time to take care of yourselves, it'll end up paying for itself in the long run. And, it's always a catch-22, right? Like, how can I, we had one employee who did not sign up for our health insurance, and they got sick, and they're like, well, I can't come into work because I'm sick, but they're like, I also can't afford it. So it's like, they're constantly digging themselves out of a hole, even though the hole's getting bigger, right? So it's about education, I think, too, and imploring to the staff and making sure that they're putting their money where they need to in order to really take care of themselves. So that was our biggest challenge, was teaching the younger, newer industry people, like, budget for health insurance. We're offering it, take it, and it'll end up helping you in the long run.
So that's a long-term view. It's giving a long-term view to people in their early 20s, not always, right, but who may not always have it, and we've all been there. But it's also in general, and I've heard that from a number of you, and Mo, I actually read it on your Instagram account too. Ron, you just said it. Taking a long-term view as an owner, that you might make less money at the beginning. And this ties up with some of the questions that are coming in terms of how do you make it work financially? How with one or two restaurants, how do you make it work? How do you budget for that? What are some of the financial breakdown behind that? Is it just you accept to make less money yourselves?
Yes.
I mean, you have to, yeah, it really is.
It
right?
really is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think people forget that we are in the service industry, and people that work in your restaurant, they're your most important commodity. People say your customers are, but no, it's your staff, because they're going to take care of the people that will pay your rent, right? So yeah, it's more of about a culture, instilling that value of taking care of your people, and making sure that your policies and the budget or the financials that you have set in place reflect that, and that you prioritize your people and not your margins. Obviously, don't do it if you're going to be in the red and you're not going to be able to.
Yes, exactly.
But do what you can, right? Whether it's you pay 100% of it, 50% of it, 25% of it. You can put different tiers on it. Like at Lazy Betty, all managers get it right off the bat if they want. For non-management, we put a 6-month period on it. So if you're with us for 6 months, then you can sign up for it. So, it's just all about what, all the operators know what their numbers are. So you got to find what you're living, what you're comfortable with.
And that goes beyond benefits, right? I mean, if you're paying higher wages, higher hourly wage, that also probably takes some from your pockets for that long-term view, right? But to this benefit.
I just want to say, training has its cost associated with it, but you will have training cost if you have really bad retention rate. Like if you have a new person coming in and they don't stay more than a couple months, and then you have to have another new person and another new person, that's also training. I think investing in employee wellness and long-term focused training will eventually pay off. I may even major that like it will pay off better than not investing it. I also want to say that we do something called open book finance. I think Josh touched up on this a little bit. We're very open about our profit and loss statement. We talk about it a lot. So if we have a night where it's a little short staffed and everybody has to hustle, the staff understand that the tip pool would be bigger. So the hustle is a little less painful, for example. And not only is it about personal learning about finances or your own well-being, I think it happens concurrently for the better bottom line of your business as well.
And
Josh, anything you want to add?
Yeah, on Jihei's comment about bottom line, so you hear that and you hear the end of the profit and loss statement is the bottom line or the net operating profit, but we actually work in an open way with finance and what the point of the business, and we have more than one bottom line, and I think that's a really important way. This is only our business, so you have to search your own values and search what's important for you and what you're putting into the world and what you're taking out of it. But profit alone is not the end of the story for us. So we work with great products that we create and a great environment that we're creating and great jobs. And great jobs start with appropriate and fair pay and scalable pay and career pathways for everybody. That's our definition of it. So if that comes at the expense of the profit, well, those things have to work holistically. So if the profit itself and therefore my compensation comes at the expense of somebody else's job, then I haven't done my job. And I say all of that because that makes it really easy to decide what to do if you start by answering those questions first. And anybody listening, you're welcome to say that your goal is to pull $250,000 plus a bonus out of your restaurant group every year, and that's fine. But you start with that question. I don't, but I'm paid well. I don't want for anything, and I don't want for anything because of the work that other people do with me. And that's how I evaluate the question.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about how, because this is so much culture, the cultures you're creating, which, as we've talked about, helps with acquiring and retaining staff. You make it sound not only like, you make what you do sound like, why would anyone operate in any way different than what you're doing? You make it sound easy also. So some of the questions that have come in that kind of relate to that, and if you can all answer briefly, what advice do you have for businesses in areas with highly competitive labor markets? And Eric, who's asking that, is asking that from the Bay Area, so extremely competitive. Whoever wants to go first.
It's about having a viable product, right, as well, and a business model. So I don't know exactly what competitive labor market means. Well, I mean, conceptually I do, but I don't know exactly what the environment is. I'm familiar with the Bay Area though, so I kind of get what you're getting at. And as an entrepreneur, you have to bring a product to the market that people want to pay for, that they will pay for at the amount that you need to budget for staff for. And if that means that you have to cut the menu in half, or you have to, change the service model, change the pricing, then, this is your job as an entrepreneur now. So you just have to do that work. And that's not easy. I didn't have training for that job. I had to learn it on the job, just like I learned to be a chef on the job, but people helped me. So I sought out mentors. I'll put my email in the chat. I can't give away all my time because my staff needs it, but I'm happy to help with like what these things look like practically. Find someone who's been there before. And if the labor market is so competitive that other things have to be adjusted in a holistic fashion, I mean, this is just basic P&L work now. You have to work the spreadsheet lines until it makes sense, and then you have to test your hypothesis a few weeks later, and then you have to change.
I want to piggyback on that and say that when you're looking at expenses, I think it's really easy to point at the labor line and say, if we paid $2 an hour less, but staff retention shows up in the P&L in a different way. So I would advise that have a long point of view instead of a month-to-month to short numbers driven. I did mention that I questioned the decision to do one fair wage every day for a long time, but it really did come down to, values are great, but if you cannot feed yourself, that's really tough. But it really did come down to crunching the numbers in a couple of different ways and creating different scenarios to see what really worked. And yeah, we did make different decisions. Instead of cutting labor, we decided to streamline the menu. We decided to focus on sales training so we can make sure that we sell another glass of bottle of wine or things like that. So I think labor shouldn't be the linchpin of whether or not it breaks or makes your business.
Mo and Ron, anything?
On the cutting of the menu, I think was very vital to the change that I went through, as Josh was saying. Reconcepting it can be difficult. Our restaurants are our children, and it's hard to take a look at them and say you're not working, and I need you to do something different. So instead of opening a second brick and mortar, I got a ghost kitchen instead, and I'm focusing all of my efforts on my takeout program. Is how do I elevate that program in order to keep my brick and mortar, in order to keep my employees, to push my pay. My goal is to push my pay to $20 by the end of the summer. So in order to do that, what changes do I need to make in my concept and how I produce my menu? You know, we got rid of the fryer. Fry oil is expensive, like little things that make every dollar come back into, now I can put this into training a staff member. Now I can put this into the wine program, the little things that the guests look forward to when they come in. Again, it's all a big circle. We're all just trying to take away from here to add on to there. It's a constant, I look at it every morning, which I think is also important. Look at your numbers every morning, make sure they make sense. If you see something going overboard, get in ahead of it. Our business is proactive, never reactive. And the best way to make sure you keep going forward is to, like G is saying, look forward, look to the longer haul, not just next month, but next year.
I love that so much, Mo, and like the way that almost sounds like two disparate concepts between what Jihei said and what Mo is saying, and they're not. You know, you're getting in there early, so you know what the trends are going to tell you long term, but your success can't be on that day-to-day basis, but the work is, right? So I love hearing both those two things together, and the open-mindedness for those kind of changes. I don't mean to jump in between those two things. It's exciting to hear that you can't be one single-minded, that this is what I believe like should be on the plate in my restaurant. Sure, you start with that, but then you have to deal with the real world and all of the people that help you mold that real world. And iteration is everything. So act every day, be aware, but count your success on a much longer time frame. We had all the same questions, G. Hey, we spoke, you and I, before we did this experiment, both of us, and then we didn't speak for years because we were so busy. But that first year was hell. It's not anymore.
First year was tough.
So we have just 2 minutes left, and there are amazing questions in the chat. I had one more for you. So I'll give you the choice of 2 questions to answer as your closing statement. So briefly, so either what's your elevator pitch for any of your colleagues who want to change their business model, and especially at the wage level? And then the second one, what are creative recruiting ways that you've used lately? So whichever you want to answer. Ron, let's start with you.
I would say, in terms of changing your business model, I think it's just about communication and education. I think it's much easier, Jihei said it earlier, to start off with a certain model than to change it. But if you can kind of, a lot of the people on this panel or the attendees have been in business for a long time. So you have hard data that you can provide to your staff. And I think that's all that's the most important step, is education and teaching them. And you can put up all your formulas based on last year's numbers and all that, and then you roll it out. And there's going to be, anytime you roll something out, you're going to have rough waters at the beginning, but once they get it going and they see the benefits of it, you're going to love it at the end of the day. And in terms of, I guess, one fair wage, I guess we're all focusing on one fair wage, which is very important, but I always find that in terms of your labor, there's 2 factors that you really have to harp on in order to, have long-term sustainability. And obviously, yes, one is the financial side, which is the wage and benefits and all that. But I think it's also how your product in itself. Are you positioning your product so that the people you hire are learning tangible skills? For example, like, are you buying a cheesecake from Cisco and just putting it on a plate? Or are you making the cheesecake from scratch, right? If you are teaching someone how to make something from scratch, that skill goes further, right? And same thing with service, right? Are you teaching someone to just key in, the product on the POS, or are you teaching them how to read a table, how to, set your reservation time so you can maximize your revenue and blah, blah, blah. Those are the hard skills that will keep people with your company longer. and that'll also help you find the right staff that are career oriented instead of just looking for a paycheck, right? The professionals. And that's what I find important. That also goes down to your management, and are your managers hands-on in teaching, skills, or are they just going through the motion and being like, all right, this is the chicken and you punch it in here, or you'd be like, all right, you got to teach them the skills behind it, the craft. And I think if you can hit those two notes, then your labor should work itself out. Just my opinion.
I want to piggyback on what Ron said and say that when you look at the labor cost, instead of looking at it as a cost, I would urge you to look at it as investment into your business and investment into your staff, because it will really do pay in the long run. And I don't think we're going into restaurant business thinking we're going to do this for a year or two. Yeah, we're doing this for a long run. So I would do that. And then I will also say that this is the right time to do it. I think our guests, general public, are used to pivoting coming from restaurant industries. So they'll have more tolerance for changes right now than before the pandemic. And the $15 minimum wage is coming. It has already come to major cities, and it will come eventually to everywhere. And I think being ahead of it will make you a more attractive workplace.
Mo and Josh, your closing words.
If I had an elevator pitch for why anyone should think about, revamping this way, I would say, consider the last 2 years, all the changes that we saw, the going back and forth. What would make that easier? What have you learned, and how can you change what's going on today? And then also remember that first day you opened your restaurant and how you felt with everything you were getting ready to do. Just imagine we're doing that all over again. Every day is the first day, and you get to be excited about how will my concept benefit my neighborhood today. And I think that's more exciting than anything. And for me to hire, I think creative ways, it's not really creative. It's just things I think we forgot how to do because we got so used to going online and posting a job. I like to stop by the culinary schools in Chicago. I like to stop by the high schools who do trade, who have a little bit of cooking left in their schools. It's hard to find because it's not like when we were kids and everyone had cooking in school. But I like to stop by these places. I focus on the south and west side of Chicago for obvious reasons, if anyone knows Chicago, because I want to be able to pull people when they're young, to direct them, to kind of mold that clay the way somebody dragged me off my bum when I was 18. So yeah, I think it's not creative, but it's the ways that we've forgotten how to do. We don't do the legwork anymore. We just go online and find a resume. But if you get out there and you find kids who are interested in cooking, as much as I don't always enjoy them, Cooking Network, food channels, these things got other people interested in something they didn't know really existed. And it's time to kind of pull on those brains. So, stop by your community colleges, your high schools, try to find staff there that can mold and then grow with you. They'll appreciate the opportunity more than you think.
Josh?
Yeah, just exciting to hear all of that. I think we've covered why this is a good idea to do it in general. So I guess I would say why now. The work is coming back, restaurants are coming back, but for a lot of you listening, maybe the staff hasn't. Remember, at least for those of you in major cities, like end of 2019, we were already talking about this. Everybody was lamenting the labor shortage in restaurants, right? So this isn't a post-pandemic problem. It's been exacerbated by the pandemic for lots and lots of reasons. But the problem was already there because people were tired of doing the work the way that it was traditionally done. And we were used to recruiting people. You need 5 years of fine dining experience and I'll pay you minimum wage to do it. And everybody wanted to learn so they could have a chance to be like you. That's over. And we're going to be better for it. So, investing in your resource, the investment in the labor, as Jihei said, flip the traditional models. We don't do 30, 30, 10. I won't explain it, but those of you listening, we do 20, 45. 45 is labor, and it works. And we invest in younger people like Mo is doing. We invest in people that have never worked in restaurants before, and we invest heavily in the people who are traditionally undervalued by the restaurant work that they already want to do. So invest in those members of your staff who are immigrants, who are single mothers, who are part-time workers. Ron, super exciting, the privilege of being able to have mostly part-time workers. Yeah, celebrate it. And invest in those people who are coming to your businesses for all sorts of reasons that are their own, and respect those reasons. Not to value somebody else for something different than they're bringing to the table, or lamenting you wish it could be a little bit more. It's your restaurant. Why does it need to exist? There's already one next door. So let it exist to value people, and your success can be built on the value of those people.
Thank you all so very much. And this idea of valuing people, of looking for workers, the old-fashioned way, going to culinary schools, of looking at people who would not have traditionally necessarily thought of the restaurant business. Those are all creative ways and ways to hopefully fight your labor shortages and creating business models that are the right ones for the future, for the now, never mind the future, but for the now going forward, and think long-term and get your staff to think long-term. Ashley, I don't know if you're coming back, but I want to start by giving a virtual clap to all of our panelists. Thank you so much. And
yes,
to all the great questions from the audience.
Absolutely. So again, this was recorded. We'll be posting it online. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Anne, for moderating, and thank you, the audience, for joining us. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please go to jamesbeard.org, where you can see all of our future conversations on all of our different platforms, and all of our virtual events, including these industry support conversations. Also, feel free to sign up for our industry support newsletter. It comes out about every week, and we'll list all of these topics, all of these conversations, and links to register for them. You'll also be able to donate to our ongoing avenues of industry support. If you choose to, please visit jamesbeard.org/donate. And thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your